Om. 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Muninam Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Vridavarshini Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusantatami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini Namostu te Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pulla Ravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamayah Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Panaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetamrutatuhe Namaha Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yatkripa Tamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangapadakramopanishadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyanavastita Dadgatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantam Navidhu Sura Suraganaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyaha Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha. So welcome everyone to almost the second last session of the 8th chapter. So, as always, I like to recap a little bit, but here I wanted to mention that, as we started with the second half of the 3 parts of 8th chapter, in the 7th chapter, we had a kind of a brief statement on what true religion is and how we should practice it. Just this idea of connection with something beyond us. But in the 8th chapter, we're really, really exposed to the fact that we are beyond this physical body, this physical body. It really takes us, makes us, it takes us into this necessity to know why we have this life. What is really the relevance of our present life? And how does it affect the future life? All this, only in the 8th chapter, you see this. And if you think about it, in connection with the 7th chapter, where, there he says that religion is lived in this world for the sake of taking us into a new realm of being, which is actually called after death in this 8th chapter. This 8th chapter discusses about actually the question of life after death. Is there really life after death? What happens to that life after death? And so that is really what we are discussing here. And this is actually, which you will see not really explained in many religions, but we have this in ours and specifically in this 8th chapter, right? So in the reflection time, I just wanted to walk you through a little bit here. How basically when we talk about life after death, we as jivas, right? We are just coming into this world. We live this materialistic world, and we really don't worry about the fact that is there really a life after death? We just, because we get so caught up in the busyness of the world, and we really lose connection with one another, with basically people. Thankfully, I have all of you, so I have not lost connection with all of you. So I'm really grateful for that. But you know how it is in the world, we just go through life, we make a certain set of friends at a particular time, then we move on, we make another set of friends, and just life goes on. We take ourselves and this ecosystem that we have developed wherever we go, we really don't really worry about what happens after we've gone through one scenario after another. What happens after that? And that is really in the eighth chapter, he really talks about, what happens after leaving the body. That is really a very important question, because we don't realize it while we're living, that we're not going to be living in this world for an indefinite period of time. What, it doesn't matter. You may be practicing a lot of yoga, you may be having, what should I say, very good diet. And I'm actually going to be giving a talk on ancient chemistry a little later today. And if you think about it, ancient chemistry those days had developed in order to keep this body alive for a long period of time. Okay. But even then, we have to die at some point. And we don't really worry about it. Now we may say, do I need to worry about it? Why do I care? Really, that's because I'm living in this world, I'm enjoying it. I really don't know what will happen in the future. So why do I really care about it? Right? Now, the only reason why we care about it is even in this day, in this day when I'm living from one ecosystem to another, I see there is a connection. Whatever I have done, maybe 2 years ago, say, for example, I'm just speaking about my own life, 2 years ago, in fact, it's just about 2 years now that I've come to India. Okay. And if I think about it, 2 years ago, I was in Michigan. What did I do in Michigan? What was my thing? Is that really affecting me now here? I would say 100% yes. In the sense, whatever I have done in the past is affecting me. Now, one may say that, after all, you're starting a brand new life. Is there really a connection? But there is. How does it happen? It is only because I do not identify myself only with the physical body. There is another being within me, which is what I'm identified with, which is what is carrying me through everywhere. My physical stuff at the outside, if I was wearing more pants and everything in Michigan, I'm wearing more saris here. That's an external physical body, but that is carrying me through. If I can even understand to that extent, then I will realize that when I go from this physical body to another physical body, which I don't know what I will have, I don't know how much my bank of vasanas is there within myself, which will push me into something else. So I need to be aware of the fact that I'm not this physical body. I'm actually this subtle body plus the karana sharira, sukshma sharira plus the karana sharira. That is who I am. That is that body which is going from one place to another, that will go further on. If I can only have that kind of a connection, then I will really understand this eighth chapter very well, and the eighth chapter will be relevant for me. That is what Krishna is trying to say here. Any questions?
Good example, Sunita. Good example. Moving from
I'm just taking it, everything what we do,
Very nice.
we have to take it to our own physical self. Otherwise, it will be reading like Gita. I'm doing Gita for somebody else, So that's why I thank each one of you, actually, because it makes me remind me of myself. And whatever I'm speaking is only an outside, it's an external reflection of what it is. And that is why I always ask you also, the reflection point is, what do you think? Do you agree with the fact that I'm not just this physical body, which now that it is winter, you're wearing two more layers. Now, do you really identify with yourself with that jacket which you're doing? You don't. You identify yourself in some way with the physical body. But what Gita is saying is that go even beyond. Go beyond to identify yourself with something else within you. One layer at a time. Think about who you are at the mind level. Think about who you are at the intellect level, and then go even beyond. That's why in the 8th chapter he starts off with Arjuna asking all those questions. He's asking those questions, really tell me what is the ultimate goal in which I need to identify myself. As I said, today I'm identifying myself with the jacket that I'm wearing. I need to go beyond. And therefore, he gives a lot of very good tips. Krishna tells Arjuna, in the previous, like in Ananya Cheta Satatam Yomam Smarati Nityashaha. In fact, it's coming up here. He says, Ananya Cheta Shatatam Yomam Smarati Nityasaha Tasyaham Surabha Partha Nitya Yuktasya Yoginaha. So he's continuously trying to tell us, don't identify with your physical body. Don't do that. Keep on going beyond, and he will tell you, he's telling us what the final goal of this whole life is, and try to see how you can go up to that. And for that, he says, just think about Om. Om. Just keep on identifying yourself with Om. Om is the symbol for that ultimate goal, that ultimate Brahman. So that is what he's trying to get to. And he also says that, if you don't identify with that Om, how will that Om identify with you? So, how can I expect, like, for example, in day-to-day stuff, right? I always expect that, God should be kind to me. I'm going to the temple every day. So why is he not really concerned about me? Now, the reason why he's not concerned about me is that because I'm not necessarily connecting myself to him or her or it, however we want to look at that God. So it is really very, very important that I have to establish that connection with that absolute. Only then, that is the only condition that he's saying, that please connect with me. If you connect with me, I will connect with you completely. I'll give you you give yourself completely to me. I will give myself completely to you. But then we are not able to do that because in our mind, I still think that I am attached to myself. I'm not attached to that universal consciousness. And that is what I had here. I have to establish, it's again, I gave last time also this example. It's like the space in my room. If I take all these walls out, this space will become part of the outer space. Actually, it is not become, it was always part of the outer space, correct? I have put these walls and I have made that as a room for myself. So too, we all have put this mental limitations within us, saying that, I'm Geeta, I'm Meenu, I'm Sunita, and I keep operating only from that level. I have not made that equilibration. Equilibrium means, connecting the individual consciousness to the absolute consciousness. Just like I know that there was no change in the room, the space was the same. There was necessary equilibration of the space in my room with the external space. So too, I have to establish the necessary equilibration of consciousness in order for me to get to the highest goal. I need to think that the highest goal is being part of that outer space. And towards the end, I'll come up with a very beautiful example, if you see that, of the end of the lecture. So, but we are unable to do that because we have an impure mind. What do we mean by impure mind? Our impurities of a mind is basically that through our identification with this external kosha, I bring in all my attachments to my physical, my sentimental, my biological needs, my social needs. And because of that, I get limited. The room is limited only to my family, my community, etc. I don't think about this entire world. I don't think about what is happening in Africa. I don't think about what is happening in Germany. I don't think about what is this. Or I may see some news, but it doesn't strike me at all. I just keep going. So that is where ultimately we are going to. So it's a very, very top high goal. Yeah.
I have a question. See, you told me that the walls have, we have different, the same outside is inside the four walls also. But if this inside stuff gets poisoned, or if there is bad odor or something, so that doesn't spread to outside. Outside is pure. The inside becomes impure. Same way in our mind also, the conscious in us will become impure depending on our mind actions or actions we do.
Correct. Absolutely. In fact, I mean, you bring up a very good point. I was just actually writing some kind of notes for myself, for the New Year resolutions, which is exactly what you said. My odor within myself, it contaminates all my actions. Correct? It contaminates my actions, and those actions, people see it and then attribute that to me. So, uh, I need to start working on that odor, literally the vasana. Only when I clean up my vasanas will my actions be more pure. And when my actions are more pure, I actually am more connected to the world.
So the consciousness is not pure all the time, or individual consciousness need not be pure.
The individual consciousness by itself is pure. It's just the layer with which it is attached to. See, consciousness, you can look at it as, this electricity, right?
Mm,
Electricity is the same to everybody. But
mm,
if my system is faulty,
mm.
my system will not work.
Okay,
Correct?
okay.
And the
So,
relationship of consciousness to myself, I have to look at it like how, the sword goes on a sheath, or this knife, we keep the knife into a cover. The
mm,
cover and the knife is not connected to actually.
correct, correct. Mm-hmm.
But without the knife inside, that whole cover doesn't have any this, right?
Right,
It's the
right.
knife that gives that shape to the cover. Just like that, it's the consciousness
Okay,
that is giving all of us the ability to be who we are. But that consciousness is different from the sheath.
okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Okay. Thank you. Good.
you're welcome. So then in the 20th shloka, he says, Paras tasmat tu bhavo anya vyaktu vyaktat sanatana ya sab sarveshu bhuteshu nasyatsu na vinashyati. So basically in the 20th shloka, he's saying that um, after going through all the things about when he talked about the 14 worlds and say that even when we do a lot of good things, we are evolving spiritually. However, uh, um, ultimately our moksha that we get is we can go all the way up to Brahmaloka, and when the whole Brahmaloka grows to pralaya, at that point, even at that point, the consciousness will not die. Even if millions of Brahmas and everyone go, it says it will not die. And then he says avyaktokshala ityuktaha tamahu paramam gatim. So he says, if you keep on identifying yourself with that absolute consciousness, that consciousness will never ever die. You know, it's like this beautiful example of which Swami Chinmayananda gives in the book actually. It's like this blackboard, okay? Now, this blackboard, what happens is, he gives this example of, in the same day, what happens is there is a math teacher who comes and writes a lot of math formulas, okay? Once her period is over, she just wipes it out and then she goes away, okay? Then what happens is a chemistry teacher is coming. A chemistry teacher comes and uses the same board to write all these formulas and everything. Then she goes away. Then, you have another person coming in, a geography teacher. The geography teacher comes in, he goes away, right? But what remains at the end? It's the blackboard. That still remains, right? So to all of us, we are like each one of those teachers. We have taken up different roles. We go through this, but ultimately it is in the bed, that substratum of that consciousness, that this whole drama of life is happening. But what remains is that consciousness. We tend to get identified with each one of these figures or forms which you see in the board, and we run around thinking that is who I am and everything, but ultimately we are nothing but that absolute consciousness, just like how the blackboard doesn't change at all, it remains the same.
Very good example.
So that is what in shlokas we saw in 22, where that avyakta, he says avyakta, that exists even higher than the unmanifest. When the beings in all the worlds are this unmanifest is not destroyed. That means it, like the blackboard, which is not destroyed, we also have that ability to completely identify ourselves with that Brahman. That Brahman is the one which is represented by the blackboard. And we also saw this example also last time about how when I go through sleep and dream and this one, it's like, when I go to sleep, I identify myself with all the dream objects and everything. Okay. That is how we are living our waking world. But I need to get to the state where even when I'm awake, I am actually identifying myself more with that absolute consciousness and not with the form. Of course, I have to identify myself with a form. Like, for example, when I'm a speaker now, I have to identify myself and speak. But then at the back of my mind, I have to be constantly aware of that Om, and that's what in the 8th chapter he talks about. So, Abhyuktokshara, yeah, go ahead, Anand. Or
yeah, so is another way of saying is like a sakshi.
correct.
The blackboard example or
Yes.
the movie screen example, that could be like.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thanks.
We have to be a complete sakshi to everything that is going on. Sakshi is a witness, right? So just like I go to a movie house, like he said, I know it's difficult to be a sakshi when you're going for a movie, especially when you have paid so much of money to have the thrill of enjoying the movie, the idea is, yes, while you're in the movie house, you enjoy the movie, go through all the thrills and everything. But the second you come out of the movie house, don't carry the movie with you and start crying at home, thinking about the heroine who died or whatever, So that's the whole idea. So then the question may come as to, to reach that Brahman, does it take a lot of time? Does it take a lot of effort? What Krishna is also saying is that to reach that place, which is Tad Mama Paramam Dhama, which is what the Tad Dhama Paramam Mama, that part of it, he says it doesn't take any time at all. All you have to do is just listen. He says, you don't even have to go through Mananam and Nididhyasanam. If your mind is completely in tune to listening, you will reach that place, So that's the idea which he's saying. So now starting with shloka, then in 22 is actually the last of the 3 shlokas, which talks about that absolute state of consciousness, He talks about he says, Purusha Saparaf Partha Bhaktya Labas Stvananyaya Yasyanta Sthani Bhutani Yena Sarvam Idam Tatam. The second line is really most beautiful here, where he's saying that state of that consciousness where you really want to go, which is really what your goal is, okay? That one is attainable by unswerving devotion. He says actually it's a very, very simple thing. You can easily attain it. Okay. But what do you mean by it is very easy to attain? It is basically you can attain it only if you are 100% convinced that you are that Brahman. The second you realize that you're Brahman and all your actions are aligned to it, you're already there. And then he explains that what is that state? He says, it is that state within whom all the beings dwell. Everything is in that Brahman, and it is that Brahman which is pervading everything. Okay. Simple example is again that ocean and the wave and the bubble and everything. All those bubbles and waves, they're all different forms, but they are all in the ocean, right? And that ocean is nothing but water. And it is that water which is pervading through all the bubbles and waves and everything. So that is why he says, if you can understand you are that, suppose a bubble recognizes that it is nothing but water, not the bubble, then it is identified with the ocean. It doesn't have to do anything. How far does that bubble have to go in order to be part of the ocean? Not far at all, correct? So that is what he's saying here, that within whom all the beings dwell and by whom all this is pervaded. So yasya antasthani bhutani. So that is all the bhutanis are in him. And yena sarvam idam tatam, both, whether it is forms, formless, everything, all this is pervaded by only that consciousness. Nothing else is there. So that's the idea. So in order to get to this state, obviously you need to have completely ananya bhaktya labhyaha. Ananya, I want this and only this. Like Vivekananda would say, stop not until you reach the goal. Think of only one thing and focus completely your attention to it. Work with only that goal in that mind. Only then you'll be able to reach that state of Brahman. So he says that's so if you have to vote for any one per thing, just vote for that Bhagwan, that consciousness. So he says Purusha Sapartha Bhaktya Labhyatva Ananyaya. So it is possible to do this aspect. And this is what I have this beautiful example of this bubble. How far does a bubble have to really reach to get to to get to that state? The minute and this picture is actually very beautiful because it's like the drop has to just break, correct? Or when the kids they have that bubbles with the soap solution, how those bubbles they break so easily, right? And they become part, that space which was there within that bubble immediately becomes part of the atmospheric space. It is that simple. So when I just saw this picture, I said, I have to put it, it's an immediate dissolution like this drop on the surface of the ocean. It does not have to travel any distance at all to go to the ocean. Okay. So he just has to do it. So this brings us to a point of, like we think we need to put a lot of effort in order to reach that absolute state. Okay. But it is possible to do it the second I realize this. And of course, that realization doesn't happen just like that. It has to happen with a lot of understanding and bhakti. Both of them have to go together. So bhakti is needed. And to some extent, of course, for people like us, that effort is also needed. But if I have the understanding, this bubble can just dissolve immediately and become part of the ocean. And that is moksha. And that is mukti, right? Any questions so far? And so this brings us to the question of what is Krama Mukti and what is Sadhya Mukti, Krama Mukti is when there is a gradual ascent by stages, okay? Like, for example, if I have to come from Michigan to India, I have to first take the car. I mean, first, of course, I have to walk all the way to my door. Then from the door, I have to get into the car. Then from the car, it takes me to the airport. And from the airport, I have to walk some distance. Then I take the flight. Then I go to, if I'm coming through Delta or something, I have to come via Frankfurt. And then I have to come to Chennai. So there is a gradual ascent through the thing, right? So, I at different stages, I have to take, or even if I'm traveling by car, I go through rest areas. So there are a lot of stages that happens, but ultimately I will reach there. So that is the Krama Mukti. Satya Mukti is the second I realize that I have reached that goal. I have understood that I am that consciousness completely, then I reach it right away. So these are the two different type of goals. And this is what in this last chapter, last series from shlokas 23 onwards, the 8th chapter really concludes with this aspect of it. Now, when we talk about this conclusion of the journey of the soul, I'm sure many of you probably have read the Bhagavatam and probably have read other things about, Garuda Purana and all that, where there are a lot of stories about people, a lot of souls, who go through big, lot of, about how the Yamaduta comes and takes the soul away, and then the soul goes through a lot of, issues. I won't go into all that because I have not read Garuda Purana. I've only read through secondary sources. I have not read the actual Garuda Purana. Bhagavatam, of course, we did that and we went through a lot of stories of Dundukari and everything. But here it is very simply said that there are only two paths by which how the Sukshma Sharira, the Jiva, we call this as Jiva. Jiva doesn't necessarily mean just the person with the physical body, but Jiva is the body, subtle body, which leaves once the physical body has left out. So it goes through what we call that as a northern path and a southern path. So people, people who do good deeds, they also go through this. Northern path is again a person who has not only done good deeds, but who's actually it's kind of a spiritual path. So both of them, are mentioned here. So people do a lot of good deeds. They go to what they call as Chandraloka, the realm of the moon, where they stay, invisible. They enjoy all these fruits of the deeds. But when the momentum of the good deeds are exhausted, they come back to the world. So that is one path. But if the person has understood that me, the consciousness, is the same as the whole absolute consciousness, for that person, the path is a little different. And so these are the two paths, which is called as the northern path and the southern path. It's like, for example, I remember when Gita, we organized this cruise, this Alaskan cruise. When we went on the Alaskan cruise for 10 days, oh my God, it was 30, 40 restaurants, how many swimming pools, massages, shopping mall right in the center of the cruise, so many different things. Whatever you want to enjoy from a materialistic point of view, everything was there. You enjoy it. And then you think that, okay, that's it, I'm done, I'm enjoyed it, No, it doesn't happen that way. You actually came back to the shore. We landed at Seattle and then we came back to Michigan and then we led our same life over and over again, right? So to some extent, the punyam that we had gathered or the ability to enjoy these things, which we had that opportunity, we went on the cruise, we did that. So that part of it is what Krishna is saying that, I'll tell you about these two paths, which in the Uttarayanam or the Jyotirmarga or Dakshinayana, which is the Dhuma Marga. Dhuma Marga means the smoky path. And Uttara is Jyoti, which is the path of the light. So these are the two things he's going to be dealing with at this time, because Arjuna had asked the last question. He asked, how do I realize this Lord at the time of the death? Even though Krishna had actually already answered it, but he didn't really talk about the paths which Arjuna has to go through. Or we all have to go through, So he talks about those two paths, but he'll also talk about the type of people who takes those two paths. So that's why the two things. So in Shloka 23, Yatra kale tvanavrittim avrittim chaiva yoginaha prayata yanti tam kalam vakshyami bharatarshava. So he says he describes basically the two paths, Very cleverly, he says yatra kale. So, that path at appropriate time, yatra kale tu anavritam. So there are two paths. Anavritam, which is a path of no return. Okay. And then there is a path which is avritam, which is a path of the return. And he says, yogis are the ones who will never return because they have understood. A yogi is a person who has really understood this path or this philosophy. That's what it means. Because we say, yogi, the word yogi comes from the word a person who practices the yoga. And what is yoga? Yoga is the one where the person has completely understood his union with the consciousness. So that path by which yogis never return, as also the path by which one return when they're departing, these I will tell you, O Bharata. So he just says he just introduces the fact that there are two paths here. Then in Shloka 24, he will talk about actually the northern path or the Uttarayanam, or we call that is the brighter path. Okay. So he's starting with a very positive note here. He tells you, this is the path of, the bright path that people take, and this is the path of no return. Okay. Agnish Jyotiraha Shuklaha Shanmasa Uttarayanam. Agnish Jyotiraha Shuklaha Shanmasa Uttarayanam. Tatra Prayata Gachanti Brahma Vido Janaha. Tatra Prayata Gachanti Brahma Vido Janaha. So he says, he refers to this path as the bright path. Bright path or Shukla path or Devayanaha. So Agnihi Jyotihi Aha Shuklaha. Agni means fire, Jyoti means light, and Ahaha, it's a daytime, it's the bright fortnight. And this is the Shanmasa Uttarayanam. This is the Uttarayanam part of it. They follow Tatra Prayata Gachanti Brahma Vido Janaha. So the people who follow this path, they are the ones who know Brahman. Who know Brahman means not just by reading or listening, but who have actually have internalized it. So Prayata, one who is departed, they actually attain this Brahman, So Agni Jyoti here, this, so this is a path which is, everything is filled with light. Everything is divine. They look at only thing is divine. So that is the Agni part of it. So the physical fire, which is Agni referring to the physical fire, it has a divinity of its own. And it assumes a divine form, in this case, a person who rises up to the celestial realms. So there is divinity in this daytime. If a person, so according to it, if a person passes away during the daytime and during the bright half of the lunar month and during the northern movement, such a person reaches that Surya Loka or the bright path, And this, the Upanishads actually, they describe a lot more stages than what is really mentioned here. And at a particular stage, after they reach the Surya Loka, this superhuman, we call the superhuman at that point because this person is really evolved to such an extent, it is said that, that somebody will come and take that superhuman and take that soul by the hand. And up to this solar part, or even a little beyond, is actually called this realm of lightning. And this is beyond the sun, the lightning of this Brahmaloka flashes. So he goes to this Brahmaloka, And in this Brahmaloka, this consciousness which is there within this particular jiva, slowly it starts to get absorbed in the bigger space. So it does not take any effort at all, and that is the path of the Uttarayanam, and it is he reaches the state of Brahmaji, and this is actually called the path of Krama Mukti, or gradual liberation, in which this jiva is supposed to be glorifying in the Brahmaloka until Brahmaji himself dissolves, which happens, if you remember, we talked about the Brahmaji's life is about 1,000 years. And when the Brahmaji dissolves, this person also reaches that state of absolute Brahman. Okay, so that is the Uttarayanam, Agni Jyoti Shuklaha Gachanti. So, but then there is also a possibility in this path to undergo that Sadhyo Mukti, which we talked about. The soul doesn't have to travel in space and time because it's a Jivan Mukta Purusha. So for somebody who is a Jivan Mukta, they don't necessarily have to go through all this time and space, So one who has understood completely, for such a person, there is no need for him to go all the way up to the sun. There is no solar orb. Like, for example, we give the example of Ramana Maharishi, for example. He is already Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. Later on in chapter 12, we'll come to that point. Sarva Bhuta Hite, he's actually, he sees himself in every being. When he sees, it's just like this example of bubble, what I showed, like when the child blows the bubble, right? In the beginning, what happens? The bubble is very small. Slowly and slowly and slowly, it expands. And then it dissolves, right? So too, if I'm able to see myself, the consciousness within me is a consciousness in you and everyone. And accordingly, my actions also aligned in the same way. Such a person, sees that consciousness, and that consciousness is everywhere. That consciousness is spread everywhere. So such a person, there is no question of any movement at all. There is no question of Krama Mukti. That person has Sadhya Mukti only, So for such a person, in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it says, Na tasya prana utkramanti. For that person, his pranas do not depart from him at all, as in the other case. He is Brahma apyeti. He reaches a Brahmanhood. He just dissolves right there. And basically, that person just leads the life until the physical body has to wither away. But that person is Brahman himself living in the world. And so these are the two paths, both of them, which happens in this northern path. Okay. Any question on this? Or we'll complete 25, which will talk about
northern path. I think there is only one northern path. What are the two paths?
No. In the northern path,
there is only one, right?
No, the northern path is only one. Yeah, it is only one. The path is only one, which is a bright path.
Right. That's what we studied right now, right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
But in that path, there are two ways in which you can travel. One way is this path of the light, where you go towards the sun, and then you go to Brahmaloka, and Brahmaloka is the last step. And at that point, also, previously we have talked about it, about how even if you reach Brahmaloka, and in Brahmaloka, there's only, you're totally in Jnana Marga, you're just completely always in that state of listening to Vedanta and everything. But if at all you do have some kind of vasana or whatever, you can still come down. But that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is once you reach Brahmaloka and you are there, then when Brahmaji goes through his pralaya, at that time he merges with Brahman. So you also will merge at that point with Brahman. That is a step-by-step process.
Okay.
But the other step is, the other process is, you don't even have to go all the way up to Brahmaloka. Even living on Bhuloka, for example, if you have completely understood your union or your connection with that absolute consciousness, you will continue to live here. But see, your body has its own prarabdha. The body has come to help you. Once we have reached that state of consciousness, the body still is continuing, and the body, you will continue with the body until the body withers away. At that point in time, the space merges. It's like the
in
same
other
example.
words, this person has no vasanas at all.
No vasanas
Say
at
that
all.
way. The other
Correct.
person who has reached the Brahmalokam may still have little bit of vasanas in him. Okay.
He could probably come down, but he could also, because of all the punyam that he has gathered with everything, he has also reached that consciousness, but he still has this,
Little bit.
outer covering. And when Brahmaji realizes, then he will also realize that. So that is the idea there.
Hari Om. So,
Hari Om,
a
yes.
person
Meena?
who departs in Uttarayana Punyakale, they don't have to travel that 1 year to get into Chandraloka, versus person departing in Dakshinayana Punyakale, they have to travel 1 year. Is that correct or not?
I myself am not very clear about what happens if somebody passes away during Dakshinayana. I only remember reading this one beautiful example about how Eknath Ishwaran, his grandmother was highly spiritually involved, and she was aware of this Uttarayana and Dakshinayana. And apparently when she was reaching to her last stages, she was able to prolong her life in such a way that she would die during Uttarayana. But I don't know the converse, like what you said, somebody who passes away during Dakshinayana, what happens to that part of it, that I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
But why is it connected? Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, didn't Swami Chinmayananda, it's Dakshinayana, right? When Swami Chinmayananda?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what just because he passed away on August 3rd, which is the second 6 months of a year, doesn't mean, so I'll have to check on that.
I thought somewhere I heard like that, so I'm not sure. I thought.
Is it that Bhishma Pitamaga, he was waiting until...
That's right.
Right?
Yes, you're right. Yes, that is correct. He was waiting on the bed of the arrows.
Yes.
Waiting for Uttarayana to come to die.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I am wondering, if the person is pure, why is he waiting till Dakshinayana or Uttarayana for the soul to leave? Why should we connect them to the time zone?
That's Purva Janma Karma, right, Sunita ji?
Yeah, so the thing is, somebody who's pure doesn't have to wait. That is for sure. There is no need to wait at all. But somebody who is, like Meenakshi mentioned, somebody who has a lot of vasanas and who are still attached, which we all know, right? We know that if I am attached to the body, if I know that my actions are not in whatever mistakes I make or whatever, then I pray for that Uttarayana Marga so that I have the ability to travel on a brighter path and spend more time in realizing and do it that way.
So somebody who dies during Dakshinayana does not mean that they will take that path, pure path.
So let's read about what Dakshinayana means, first of all. And it's basically, this Dakshinayana doesn't mean that way, actually. This Dakshinayana means that a person who has those impurities, we talked about the impure mind, those people take the Dakshinayana path. That's how it means. Okay, it doesn't mean that somebody who's very
That's
pure
what I
takes-
thought. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
Not the time frame, not the time
No,
frame.
no,
Okay.
that is not what it means.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, so maybe that also clarifies Suvarna's question about the time frame at which people pass away. Okay. धूमो रात्रिस्तथा कृष्णः धूमो रात्रिस्तथा कृष्णः षण्मासा दक्षिणायनम् षण्मासा दक्षिणायनम् तत्र चान्द्रमसं ज्योतिः तत्र चान्द्रमसं ज्योतिः योगी प्राप्य निवर्तते yogi prapya nivartate. So here he's talking about that those people who basically have these mala, who have the impurities, they take this, or who don't believe in the in this, who don't have belief in spirituality, and they take this path which is dhumaha, which is a lot of smoke, ratrihi, nighttime, and krishnaha is the dark fortnight. This shan is 6 months of the Dakshinayanam, and they follow this dark path of the lunar light, and attaining it, the yogi returns. So having this one, they return back to life in order back to where they are to practice again various karmas. They basically have actually this is I take that back. It's not about people who have negativities or anything like that. These are people who have actually done good karmas. And the upasanas, which is prompted by this one, they travel along this path of the ancestors, is called the Pitrayana, and they reach the world of its choice, and after spending due time, they return back to the earth plane. So this is only again figurative, okay? It's not as if physically they're traveling, it's only mental, So this path is actually presided over the moon, because moon is linked to the mind, right? So within their mind, they still have some desires. And because of that, they take this path. So that is how you have to look at it, not really by the time frame of January to July and August, all that stuff. So it is only Dakshinayana means they've taken the path connected to the mind because they still have some desires. And here, the word of yogi is very important, which is trying to show that these people have understood the philosophy, but still they have a lot of desires. So that is why they take this path called the lunar path. And they come back to enjoy the world again. Okay. So that is so the second line, tatra, traveling by the second line, by the second path, the word tatra, he says here, means that this is the second marga, which is he's talking about, Krishna is talking about here. And again, basically they go to a lower order. They basically, maybe they reach only up to Swargaloka, whereas the previous path, they went all the way up to Brahmaloka, So Swargaloka is also called as Chandraloka, which is a little lower than Brahmaloka. And here in this, it is definitely still higher than the other lokas like the Boer, Mahar, and all those lokas. But then they still have to do more work. And that is why he's saying, they come back. And so they have not yet completely spiritually awakened. That's what it essentially means. They've probably not done enough understanding. They've not done enough meditation. They may be really great people. They probably have done a lot of charities and everything, but still they need to do more work in order to go through the other path. So that's what he's trying to show.
What will happen to people like us?
So, good question. I mean, we have to decide for ourselves if we are the kind of people who have truly understood our connection with, so that is actually the sadhana, our sadhana or our reflection is how compassionate I am, how
What if
joyful.
you don't attend Balavihara, or if you don't read?
Correct. So at the end of the day, it is not about going to all the temples, going to Balavihars. All those are, what should I say, processes which allows me to keep my mind calm. So they are only avenues to keep my mind calm, So I can stay at home and I can just do my puja. I can take care of my parents. That is a great puja it's by itself. Anything which brings calmness to my mind, anything which does not lead me into thinking that this world is there only for myself. Instead, I have come into this world to satisfy a purpose, and am I serving the world? Am I serving the world? That should be the constant thing for all of us. And again, it doesn't mean that everyone, like for example, in the skill set, right? We always say, oh, only doctors and teachers are the best. Doctors and teacher profession automatically gives you a vehicle to serve the people immediately because you're actually touching people. You are closer to them that way. But you may be a doctor who is there in that profession only to make a lot of money, not to serve people, right? So the idea being that through my skill set, I've come into this world to be of service. Whereas if I'm doing everything for myself, so that by itself will give me an idea as to the calmness of mind that is required, the compassion, and even all these values of being honest and everything is for a reason. Because when I'm honest, my mind is very calm. I'm more helpful to everybody.
So Dakshina, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Meena.
So people departing in Dakshinayana Punya Kali, they still have desires. So does it mean that they will come back to the world again?
Yes. So Dakshinayana path, people can come back to the world, and they would have gone. Like for example, when I gave this example of the cruise, the cruise is like Swargaloka. Literally, it is heaven, right? So I finish my desires, I come back to the world, sometimes to earn more money so I can go for more cruises, or to satisfy some other desires, or to say, okay, I've gone on one cruise, that's enough for me. Now I go somewhere else.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So we have very few shlokas. The next 3 shlokas are very fast. In fact, we can just do shloka number 26 because that will complete this thing here. Shukla Krishne Gati Hyete, Shukla Krishne Gati Hyete, Jagata Shashvate Mate, Jagata Shashvate Mate, Ekaya Yatyana Vrittim, Ekaya Yatyana Vrittim, Anyaya Avrite Punaha, Anyaya Avrite Punaha. So he says, verily the path, Shukla, the bright, Krishna means dark, Gati, the path itself, He ete, so the path of light and darkness, Jagataha Shashvate Mate, of the world are thought to be eternal. By one, the light path, a man goes and never returns. By the other, the dark path, he returns again. So one may say, and going to Meenakshi's point, one who goes to Dakshinayana, does a person, go from there to the next level? May not be, because a person still has a lot of desires, right? So that is why he says there are 2 paths. One path, it's like this. I wish I had drawn the diagram, So you have a circular path. Both of them are kind of traveling by the circular path. One goes up, and goes out of the circle. Okay. the other person continues to be in the circle. So that's how these two paths are given. Okay. It's like, for example, sometimes you retire, after some time you retire and you say, this is enough for me. I've earned enough money and this is good for me. Whereas another person will say, no, this is not enough. I'm going to work until I die because I'm so active, So people may choose a different. So the person who is very active till the very end, guess what? The next, again, I'm not trying to say that is exactly what happens, but you can imagine a person who is in a very active mode, who is earning enough money, will take the next birth again, continue in that same path, right? Whereas a person who has said, okay, I've earned enough money, now I have to shift my attention to more, voluntary work or anything. You can continue to use a passion, but you're doing it more from a voluntary point of view or whatever. To that extent, you made a change, transformation within yourself. So you're already trying to get out of that circle. So that is what he's trying to say. There's one path which will take you. And the key word here is this word eternal. One may say, that what do you mean, these two paths, only one should be eternal, not the other one. He says, no, this circular path is also eternal. It will continue to keep on going round and round and round. It's for each one of us to realize that we have these two paths, and at some point I have to get out of that circle. Okay. So we'll finish next week. We'll be finishing this too because there are only 2 shlokas. Okay. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om shanti shanti shanti. Om purnamadav purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate purnasya purnamadaya purnamevavashishyate. Om shanti shanti shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Stop the live stream.